I pulled into my driveway after a 36-hour shift, my body humming with exhaustion, and some woman in a coat that cost more than my truck's monthly payment told me to take off my tire chains or pay $500 a day. That felt like a joke until she handed me a violation notice, smiling like she'd just rung a dinner bell, and then it stopped being funny. I want you to picture that moment, my truck hissing in the cold chains, rattling, breath fogging the air, because that clack-clack sound became the soundtrack for the next 2 months of my life. I'm a paramedic and a firefighter. I don't choose when people need help. Storms, car wrecks, heart attacks, I go. That night, the county had been slammed with 18 inches of powder, the kind that blunts headlights and laughs at good intentions. I'd been hauling gear through drifts, dragging people out of wrecks, and when I finally made it home, I wanted nothing more than to fall into bed and melt into sleep. Instead, I saw her, the HOA president, boots cutting angry marks across the fresh snow hair and scarf in place, walking like she owned the weather itself. "Sir, we need to talk about those chains," she said. Her name was Patricia. "You should meet her in your head, precise, vocal, the kind of person who treats rules like scripture." She had a folder thick with bylaws, and she could quote subsection and paragraph like prayer. I was in my station uniform, still smelling like diesel and adrenaline, and I remember thinking, this is ridiculous, but also I had an alarm set in less than a day, and those chains were the only thing that would get me to a call on time. She read me Section 7, Subsection 4 chains prohibited damage to roads, the usual HOA script, and then she gave me 24 hours. I tried to explain, tried to say that sometimes I respond in that truck, that it's registered as an emergency vehicle, and she smiled, that small smile people use when they've decided you're being dramatic. "We have emergency services," she said, as if I wasn't one of them. The first night I let it slide because I was tired. The second night I woke up to missed calls and a voicemail from the HOA office. The third morning there was a printed notice on my door: fines would begin. $500 a day, their math chirping away like a small, cruel machine. I called the sheriff's non-emergency line, called a deputy I knew. "If your truck's registered as an emergency vehicle, there are exemptions," he said. Relief, small, legalistic, but real, washed over me. For the first time, I felt like I had something more than a tired apology to offer. But you and I both know how stubborn people get when they want to be right. Patricia decided she was right, and she decided the rule applied to me. When the board meeting came, I went because I have this stupid faith in doing things the right way. Show up, be calm, be factual. She presented a slideshow of photos, my truck, my driveway chains visible in every frame. Her cadence was precise, surgical. She spoke about potential road damage, about fairness, about precedent. I walked up and handed out copies of the statute, the one the deputy had mentioned, and I told them plainly that my truck is registered, that I respond to calls in it, that the law supersedes HOA bylaws. You could feel the room change. Some people were with me before I said anything, neighbors who knew what it was like when seconds mattered. Others were skeptical. Patricia's jaw tightened into that look I'd seen before, the look of someone who's committed to being right, even when the facts say otherwise. Then something happened that I didn't expect. One of the board members, Richard, quietly said, "I think he's right." It was small, a whisper, a motion, a hand, but it shifted the room. They voted to consult their attorney. The attorney said what the law said. The fines were supposed to be removed. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. Patricia didn't like being told she was wrong, so she escalated. Certified letter from a Denver law firm accusing me of harassment. False complaints to code enforcement claiming I ran a business from my house. She sat outside my driveway at 2 a.m, engine idling, taking photos. That was the one that made my skin crawl, the feeling of being watched in the place I should be safest. I started documenting everything: emails, photos of notices, dates. My captain told me to do the same, to keep a file and to let the legal department know if it continued. Her harassment crossed the line. My attorney, Marcus, who'd once handled my house closing, called it intimidation. He drafted a response to the silly lawsuit threat, and when it kept going, filed a cease and desist and applied for a temporary restraining order. The hearing felt surreal. Sitting in that courtroom, the judge listened as the pattern unfurled: the fines that kept being imposed, the baseless complaints, the late-night surveillance. Patricia's lawyer said she was just doing her job. My lawyer put the documentation on the table and said something I'll never forget. "There's a difference between enforcing rules and harassing a neighbor." The judge looked at Patricia and with startling bluntness called it what it was: stalking behavior. 30 days, no contact, No approaching the house, no calls, no filings against me unless the full HOA board reviewed them. For once, the law gave me space to breathe. That should have been the end, right? The restraining order should have been a reset. Instead, the neighborhood split. Some people thought I'd overreacted. Others were sorry it had gotten this far. The board changed leadership. Richard became president and moved quickly to amend the bylaws explicitly protecting emergency response equipment. They removed the fines. A few neighbors came by with casseroles, awkward but sincere, which helped in its small human way. Then came the thing I never saw coming, the twist that turned every assumption inside out. A month after Patricia was ordered to keep her distance, we got a call for a medical emergency in Cascade Heights, and when we arrived, it was at her house. She'd collapsed. Pills on the counter, breathing shallow. I don't know what you imagine first responders feel in that moment. Anger, pity, detachment. But for me, it was a rush of everything. I'd spent weeks defending my right to use chains, arguing statutes, attending hearings. A few hours later, I was standing over her doing compressions, calling her name. There's this odd, sharp clarity that comes when you realize the person who made your life miserable is also fragile in ways you couldn't see. While we stabilized her and loaded her into the ambulance, her ex-husband grabbed my arm and sobbed a thank you through his tears. "Thank you," he said, "for helping her even after everything." I said what paramedics say. It's my job, and I meant it even as my stomach twisted. She survived. Later, she resigned from the board, went into therapy, and moved away to live with family. At her follow-up hearing, she apologized, halting sincere, and the judge extended the protective order, but allowed her to attend HOA meetings so long as she kept her distance. It was a messy, human ending, not a tidy villain defeat, but a real one where consequences landed and a person who'd hurt others had to face her own pain. What I learned from all of it isn't just about bylaws or legal exemptions. It's about how small authorities, HOA presidents, volunteer boards can become bullies when their power goes unchecked. It's about documentation and the rule of law, which frankly saved me a lot of headache. But it's also about compassion. There's no satisfaction in watching someone fall apart, even when that person pushed you into the fight. Justice sometimes arrives wrapped in uncomfortable truths. The person who did you harm may also need help. In the end, the community was better for it, which sounds weird to say because nothing about community division feels good while it's happening. Richard updated the bylaws, organized actual useful community projects, and the neighborhood started to feel like it did before barbecues, a community garden, people borrowing sugar without a 10-minute board meeting about it. The plaque the HOA gave me felt like closure more than praise. I put it on the wall as a reminder to stay involved, to vote, to show up. You can't assume fairness, you have to be present, so fairness has to work for everyone. The chains are back in my garage now, ready for the next storm. They're metal and rubber, nothing heroic, but they're also a symbol of something bigger. The right to do your job, the need to document when someone misuses authority, and the fact that the law and community can sometimes correct themselves. I still drive past the house that used to belong to Patricia now with a young family and a golden retriever, and I wave like a neighbor does. Life goes on. So here's the part where I put the lesson in plain terms because I didn't want a lecture, I wanted a takeaway. Stand up for what you need to do your job. Document everything. Involve the right authorities when behavior becomes harassment. But also remember that people who hurt you are often hurting themselves. You can be right and still be human. You can win and still feel a twist of sadness. Now, I want to ask you something and be honest, because this one still sparks arguments at neighborhood meetings when someone in a small position of power enforces a rule unfairly. Do you push for legal consequences or try to focus on community reconciliation? Or maybe both. Tell me where you land. Did I do the right thing by going to court, or should I have tried to keep things quieter? Share your story if you've lived through something like this, because these small battles are the ones that teach us how to live together or how to fall apart, trying.